So we are reading Aghora, the left hand of God. We are on chapter 2, page number 77 of the book and page number 41 of the PDF.
The vision of the goddess. There is another good reason to become a baby in front of Ma. Babies love their mothers no matter how vicious or ugly they may be. To talk idly about Ma's form is one thing, but to actually see her dripping with blood, her fangs ready to devour you, is quite another. Your reaction to her determines what she can do for you. If you don't react with fear, she will do anything for you out of love. If you react with fear or disgust, she will become all the more fearsome and disgusting. And then where will you be?
Okay. So, so there was research done at the Institute of Heart Math, and they have found that the heart rate or the heartbeat and the brainwave pattern of the mother, they start to synchronize, right? So now over here, what is she saying? That babies love their mother, no matter how vicious or ugly they may be. So there's a resonance which is created between the heart of the mother as well as the baby. Okay. Now, when birthing takes place, they stop doing it, but now they are reverting back to it. What we read in Magical Child, that the baby is immediately taken and put on the chest of the mother. Why? Because the baby is used to hearing the heartbeat of the mother, and that actually cools the baby down and brings the baby into something which is known, because she has suddenly come or he has suddenly come into an unknown environment, and that heartbeat creates that known environment, right? So that's why the babies love their parent, love their mothers, whatever and whoever they may be. Now, we create our reality. This is what we've been talking about through and through. So now whatever is in you is going to be reflected outside you also. Remember, we are operating in a thought responsive universe. And especially when you're going into these altered states where you can actually see the vision of the mother, it is a thought responsive state because it's an altered state of consciousness. Now, over there, if you're going to react out of fear, that is what is going to manifest. If you react out of love, that is what is going to manifest. So it becomes very important for us when we are going into these altered states to actually be aware of what we are thinking. That becomes extremely important. So over here, he says clearly, if you react with fear, if you don't react with fear, she will do anything for you out of love. If you react out of fear and disgust, then she becomes all the more fearsome, because your fear will build on itself or your love will build on itself. This is what we saw in Celestine prophecy also. When we are projecting love to another, that other also tends to project love to us, and that way the energy can totally get built up.
Kali and all her manifestations, Smashantara, Chinnamasta, Bagalamukhi, and the others, are not bad. No one wants to love them. Everyone is afraid. Kali can't understand why everyone is afraid of her. If you love her enough, you will change her natural destructiveness to such an extent that even the underlying thirst for butchery will vanish.
So now, if you love someone, then that is what you're going to create for that person. Now, if you don't love someone, then you're not going to create that for that person. So over here it says that if you're not afraid of her, if you love her enough, it will change her destructive nature. So a person who's very, very evil, very, very dangerous, for someone whom that person loves, the destructiveness totally vanishes.
People think that Smashantara is the most terrifying of the goddesses, and she is. One of her names is Bhayankari, that is the terrifier. But if you go to her with a heart full of love for Lord Krishna, she becomes Radha, Krishna's greatest lover. If you treat her as a mother, she loves you as a mother loves her child. But if you have no faith in Ma, the great goddess,
So now, again, we are in a thought responsive universe, right? So now, if you go to her with Krishna, she becomes Radha. So she is responding to what you are projecting in that altered state of consciousness.
but if you have no faith in Ma, the great goddess, and if you fail, then there remains nothing for you but to be born over and over again until you get it right.
So again, this is the cycle of life. If you've not learned the lesson that you've come here to learn, you're going to come back. So that's how all the patterns again start getting created.
You may go to an image of Ma and tell her, Wah Ma, how lovely you are, or how frightening, or whatever. But the emotion you feel is only a reaction to her outer form. You must know what sort of being you are worshipping if you ever want to develop a real relationship with her, if you ever want to get underneath her skin and reach her inner being.
So again, the surface is not what is inside. So what you're looking for getting is that inner pulse, that inner vibration, that inner connection, not the external connection. Okay, that becomes important. The external facade is not as important as that internal connection.
Without knowing her inner being, how can you know her? And before you try, sorry, and before trying to go inside, you must first understand her external form because it is actually your external form. The Atman or universal soul is the orb of the sun, and you are the reflection. Just as the moon can be reflected in thousands of pools of water at once, the Atman can appear in millions of humans and still remain aloof, untouched.
Okay,
Most humans are
one
imperfect
second, Shivani.
reflections.
So over here, he's saying that before you go inside her, first you must understand the external form because that is your external form. So what you are and what you resonate with, that is what you will perceive in her form. Okay. So clarifying again, it comes back to our thoughts. Clarifying our thoughts when we are in that state of consciousness again becomes very, very important. Okay. Also, the Atma is nirlep. Okay. It is not going to be affected by what is happening around it. It is not going to be affected by Maya. It is pure, right? But it can have multiple reflections. So it can appear in various forms in various places.
Most humans are imperfect reflections because they are enmeshed in the three gunas, the three principal qualities of existence. If a lake is disturbed, it cannot reproduce truthfully the image of the moon. But when it is calm, the image is perfect. When you see Ma, you are seeing her through the veil, the film of the three gunas, which explains why you cannot see her in her true form in the beginning.
So again, the three gunas is sattva, uh,
Rajas and Tamas.
rajas, and tamas. Okay. There has to be an ideal balance between the three in your system to observe something with purity of consciousness. Now, again, over here, the principle of the pond has been used, right? Now, if I throw a pebble in a still pond, I can see all the ripples. So, in a still pond, I can see the reflection. But if there is agitation, there is anger, there is waves on the pond or in a sea, then I cannot see the reflection. Therefore, stilling the mind, cooling things down, stopping the flow of thoughts and irritability and other stuff which is creating agitation in the system becomes very important to be able to actually observe her true form, right? To actually get in touch with her inner beauty.
Why is she blue? First ask that, and once you've understood it, you will be able to comprehend the rest. Why is the sky or the sea blue? If you pick up a handful of sea water, it is clear, but the sea as a whole seems blue. Air is colorless, but the sky is not. These are optical illusions, and the fact that you see Ma, or even Krishna for that matter, as blue is also an optical illusion because you are seeing them with your physical eye. Were you able to see with the divine eye, you would see something quite different. But to you now, Shmashantara is Shama, a deep, rich, luminous midnight blue.
So again, it's a matter of perception. As we start expanding our perception, when we start expanding our ability to perceive, so the vision, like the electromagnetic spectrum, is actually so much, right? It is very big, but what we are seeing is only so much. So as our perspective evolves, as our perspective of seeing evolves, our capacity to see or hear or taste or smell starts to expand, then our perception will also change. So what we are seeing will also change. So in normal state of consciousness, in the 3D reality, if we are perceiving her, she and Krishna, Lord Krishna, etc., look blue. But when we go into an expanded state, they look something totally different. What happened with Arjun? When he saw the Lord Krishna is there, the Virat Roop is always there within Lord Krishna, but you need Divya vision to be able to see that form. So Lord Krishna actually gave Arjun the Divya vision to be able to perceive him for what he actually was. Okay, so you need to shift your capacity to perceive to be able to really see what is.
Around her neck is a garland of freshly severed human heads, what we call in Sanskrit a rundamala. There are 8 grinning heads on this garland. They represent the 8 nooses, the
So
emotions which cloud the mind and incite one to perform karmas, thereby creating a tighter bondage to the ever spinning wheel of birth and death. These 8 nooses or snares, pashas, in Sanskrit, with which you could hang yourself are lust, anger, greed, delusion, envy, shame, fear, and disgust. While you are in a state of ignorance, you possess one or many or all of these emotions or grinning heads. Smashantara tells you, I chop off your head to cure you of this malady, to free you from the grip of these snares. Most people, unfortunately, are so attached to their snares that they shrink from Smashantara in fear, thinking she wants to kill them. She does want to kill you, the false you, the limited personality which has accrued over so many births. You fear her because you identify yourself with this mediocre personality when your true personality is something quite different. When she cuts off your head, your mind becomes firm, unwavering in its concentration, which enables you to succeed at Aghora sadhanas.
so what does this mean? We are all bound by stuff which takes us to the left side of the grid. If you see these over here, lust, which side of the grid would be? You'll be on the left. Anger is on the left. Greed is on the left. Delusion is on the left. Envy is on the left. Shame is on the left. Fear is on the left. Disgust is on the left. All these 8 of them are pulling you down. Now, if you are attached to them, then can you create anything? Can you expand? It is impossible because you're on the left side of the grid. And what does Ma do? Ma eliminates these from your being so that you can come onto the right side of the grid and start creating and start evolving. Okay, but most people are totally attached to all of them or one of them. They are simply attached to them and refuse to give them up. Now if you refuse to give them up, then naturally evolution also stops. Now, if you see, all of these are also related to material aspects of what we are talking about, or material aspect of living. When we are living in a spiritualistic manner, then all of them will be automatically dropped. You're not going to have them. So, what Ma wants to do is to take you from the material path to the spiritual path.
Smashan Tara is Ghat Ashtani or pot breasted. What is a more appropriate symbol of motherhood than the female breast? Motherhood is inherent in all women. Take a tiny girl of 2 or 3 and give her a doll. How will she mother it? She will fuss over it, feed it, put you to bed. You will rarely find any boy who will bother so much about a doll. Women are meant to be mothers. The instinct is inborn, but it is only potential until the woman actually bears a child herself or adopts one. Then the motherliness fully manifests.
So, all mothers have these instincts, right? And naturally, when a child is born, then generally most mothers would like to look after their children.
Even this realization does not develop spontaneously, it develops along with the child. In the case of humans, as the child develops in the womb, the mother's breasts enlarge and the nipples darken. The breasts actually double in size and weight during pregnancy. Milk also begins to form. The body is preparing food for the child even before its birth. Isn't nature magnanimous? Most men see the breast and think of sex, but you'll ruin yourself if you try to treat Shmashantara as your sex partner. You are just not strong enough to do so. Only a handful are. So you must realize she is coming to you as a mother to love and protect you and welcome her in that way. She is Lambodari or big bellied because she consumes and digests all beings in the universe. She brings them into her before sending them out again.
So, again, this is nature's way, right? The baby is coming. When the mother is pregnant, there, I've mentioned this before, but when we are using the biogeometry testing, a BG3 state or a sacred space gets created in the mother's womb, which allows the mother to carry the child, because the shape of the womb and the way that the child is carried by the mother would be totally in not balanced, right? She would be falling all the time. But because that sacred space gets created, the mother is, it herself becomes a sacred space. That's why a pregnant lady is revered. Okay, there's a lot of benefits given to a pregnant lady, and it's there in all cultures, right? Now, over here, as soon as the baby is born, the body starts to respond to create food for the baby. There have also been times when, as soon as a baby is hungry, the mother's milk starts to drip automatically. There's a resonance again between the child and the mother.
Around her waist, she wears a skirt of human arms, freshly severed. One of the Sanskrit words for arm, hand, or arm is kara, which is related to the word karma. These arms represent all the karmas for all your millions of births. There are both left and right arms, so they include all karmas, auspicious and inauspicious. Most people clothe themselves in their karmas, and she wants to cut them off, remove them from you completely. Why does she wear them as a skirt? Because they cover the navel and pubis. They are and are these not the two things for which the majority of karmas are performed? The belly and the genitals? Won't most people do anything for food and sex?
So over here, she said there are both the left and the right arms. So they include the karmas auspicious and inauspicious. So what is said also in some schools is that if you are doing good karmas, then you have to come and take and receive the bonus or the prize against the good karmas. And if you do bad karmas, you have to come and receive the prize or the bonus against the bad karmas. The idea is to become nishkam, right? To transcend the attitude of karmas. Now, in my view of karmas taken a big turn is that if you are doing anything with emotional attachment, it becomes a karma. Whether it's a good karma or a bad karma doesn't matter, it becomes a karma. But if you can devote all your actions to the divine and not attach any emotion to it, then the karma also doesn't form. Now over here, what is being said is that Ma wants you to transcend all your karmas, so she wears the garland of hands. Now, how do we perform most of our karmas? Generally, the limbs, I mean the limbs, make us perform maximum karmas, and we are using the hands, right? Of course, your thoughts are also karma, but most of the action is performed by the hands. So they represent the action or the karma, and that is what Ma cuts. They want you to transcend it. And of course, over here, very clearly, the two things that we do most of our action for, as today, 99% of the people are going to the office working for what? For their bellies. And procreation is an instinctive feeling. So for these two things, maximum number of karma is performed basically for these two things.
As anklets, Shmashan Tara does not wear silver jewelry but tiny cobras. The cobra is always the symbol of the deceased ancestors. When you do sadhana, you must always remember you are not doing it for yourself alone, but for all your progenitors. Since, had it not been for them, you could never have taken a human rebirth. She tells you, these are your ancestors who have come to me and taken the shelter of my lotus feet.
So our ancestors, very important, right? Today we are here because of them. If they wouldn't have been there, they wouldn't have procreated, then we would not be here. So your ancestry is very, very clearly marked in your system. We saw this in family constellations, where she said you can have a problem which is coming into your family from 10 generations previously. Okay, so that is one aspect of it. We also saw when we were reading Zero Limits. Of course, we've not done Zero Limits here, but when we were reading Zero Limits, one thing that Dr. Hugh talks about is that the any place also notes up all the ancestry, what all the events that happened in that place. So if you're doing a program in a hall, anyone who has been in that hall has affected that hall. Anyone who has sat on the chair has affected that chair. So that thing also needs to be cleared. So if you're clearing a hall from the energies, you're clearing the entire ancestry that has managed to be there in the hall. When we are doing biofield tuning, we have something called the ancestral river. The mother comes on the left side and the father comes on the right side. Many times that is encountered. Yesterday we found that some people got a chill at a certain spot, okay, and they said all my ancestors are coming up. So we had hit the ancestral river at that time, and for that person her ancestors started to come into their vision. So the ancestors are always there. Another thing that I have found is that if you do not clear whatever you need to clear with your parents, then it becomes very difficult to really succeed. Why? Because you are here because of them. There is a resonance of your frequency with them. So having a clearing and a good relationship with your parents become very, very important. So it says here, these are your ancestors who have come to me and taken shelter in my lotus field. So she's taking care of our ancestors also.
Smashan Tara has four hands. In one, there is a skull, which symbolizes the coating of the three gunas which surrounds the individual soul. The noose in another hand represents the noose which Yama's messengers of death use to snatch the living from the world. By seizing this noose from Yama, the king of the dead, she grants you the boon of immortality, because then there is no way for Yam to take you. With immortality comes fearlessness, since the basis of all fears is the fear of death. The third hand holds a pair of scissors with which she cuts the three Gordian knots that bind you to embodied existence. This is connected with Kundalini Yoga. And finally, in her fourth hand, she carries a sharp sword called a khadga, which is symbolic of the eternal play of destruction and creation of the universe. To you, it means destruction of your doubts, your false ideas and impressions. She strikes through them all with her sword. And because people die of doubt, this ensures you will never die.
So what is she doing here? She's cutting away all your doubts. She's taking away your fear of death, which is one of the biggest fears that we have. She's cutting away your binding to this embodied existence, right? So the material existence, she is taking it away from you. And yeah, and also she's taking away the capacity of anyone to hurt you by because of the noose, right? So what is our biggest fear? Most people have the biggest fear for anyone is the fear of death. Now if we can transcend the fear of death, a lot of the other stuff automatically falls away because it becomes unimportant. And what we are finding is people who are attending the programs, many people have already expressed this in our conversations, that when you start experiencing these higher states of consciousness, these expanded states of consciousness, automatically your fear of death also starts to come down because you actually experience that there is something beyond the life that you are leading right now. Now, because we don't know, there's always a fear of the unknown. But the moment that becomes known and you know your roadmap, then the fear of death will automatically come down. So Ma is doing all that for you. So there's a lot of symbolism in every. We've kept on repeating this. All the Devi Devtas forms, they represent a lot of esoteric thought behind it. They represent a lot of stuff which is that symbolism really represents a lot of stuff. So the more we can delve into that symbolism, the more our understanding starts to get clear as to why that form was created for that particular aspect of our lives.
Finally, her face. I think it's the most beautiful I have ever seen. She has lotus eyes. Remember, the lotus is the symbol of discrimination. And her tongue lolls from her mouth, dripping blood. All creatures, no matter how tiny, have some sort of blood like substance. When she takes it from them, she purifies the blood, as they say in Tantra, through the process known as Rakta Shuddhi. What this means is that she removes so many of the karmas which have forced the individual to be born into a particular womb that a higher rebirth is guaranteed. She actually alters the patterns of your personality, which is merely the aggregate of all your countless karmas in myriad of births. This is the Adi Devik Rakta Shuddhi, that is Tara's purification of your personality.
So
So,
again, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So, how are you beholding her? Ultimately, what is she wanting to do? She wants you to go into a higher state of consciousness. She wants you to clarify yourself. She wants you to connect to a higher goal. So, she is all the time wanting to help us to achieve that expanded state, right? So, over here, what is she doing? The blood which is dripping is she's purifying our blood. Okay, our blood is our life force. If the blood is not there, we can't live, right? So blood circulation stops as soon as you're dead, it's gone. So she's purifying that blood.
when you have realized, not just mentally comprehended, but realized through your own experience in sadhana, all the qualities of Smashan Puri, Tara, then she is no longer blue to you. She loses all color, all attributes. When you come and rest on her lap, your wrong ideas about her are removed. You see her as she really is. You can't see her with the physical eye. In Sanskrit and most Indian languages, the eye taken as a whole is a feminine noun. The eyeball is masculine. The pupil is feminine, and the retina, called the parda or curtain in Hindi, is masculine. So you see the dual nature of the external universe is mirrored in the physical eye. With the physical eye, you cannot hope to see anything but duality. But when the curtain is lifted, you see the absolute, undifferentiated reality. What we call in Sanskrit the Nirakar Tattva. Not even the shreds of distinction remain. Can a blind man tell the sex of someone in front of him? Only if he gropes. The state in which you see Smashantara in the Nirakar form of Nirvikalp Samadhi, self identification with the formlessness.
So again, what is happening? Now you're going into the expanded senses here. You're going into the expanded state of seeing. So you'll be seeing with your closed eyes. You're not going to be seeing her with your open eyes. So you're going to actually perceive her in her real form, which is not the form that we see with our normal physical eyes.
So you begin with ignorance, unable to distinguish I from I. You see Smashantara in her terrifying form because you are possessed of the right 8 nooses of eons of karmas and all the rest of the filth of your false personality, and she wants to disconnect it from you in the fastest way possible. Then you see both you and her as one. When all differences disappear, you cannot be different from her. Finally, if you are meant for it, you again return to her lap and see her in her old form. But how different it will look to you then. You can't imagine it. You simply have to experience it. You go from duality to unity and back to duality, just as Paramhans Ramakrishna did.
So again, we see her in that form because of the 8 nooses, okay, those lust, anger, etc. Now, as soon as we go into that altered state of consciousness, we see her in a pure form, but we can't hold that state of consciousness. So we come back, then we go back, we come back, and we go back. And then slowly, we start staying in that expanded state for longer periods of time. So there's a total alteration in the perception that we have.
My Tara always stands on Shiva, who is deep in Samadhi. One foot is flat on his body while the other is prodding him. Wake up, come dance with me. Why is Shiva in Samadhi? Shiva here is actually Jiva, the individual soul, plus its covering of the 3 gunas and all the rest. Because of the heavy overlay of karmas and gunas and what have you, the jiva is always in a state of deep sleep, unaware. When, because of hard penances and stiff sadhana, you realize Shiva, the jiva, becomes Shiva. Then you can say, Shivoham, Shivoham. I am Shiv, I am Shiv. Then you see there is not the slightest difference between jiva and Shiva. Some gurus tell their disciples to repeat Shivoham, Shivoham, but it is really useless. They begin imagining they are Shiva without having any of his qualities.
So what is happening? We are all a part of that expanded state of consciousness, right? That oneness. But because we are sleeping, we don't know what we are. So again, Bruce Moyne explained it in his books that when we are in that in the before life, our consciousness is so much, right? When we come here, we actually shut down and we become so much because we actually forget what we are. And then when we go out again into the expanded state, again it becomes so much. So we again come into the knowing. So what is this Shiva representing, who is sleeping, on which Ma is dancing, is that Jiva who is sleeping, not realizing who you are. So the idea, the entire idea is to actually bring realization into us as to what we are. So just chanting will not have the effect that it really wants to have. So that's why, to understand which chant will work for you, how will it work for you, whether it is taking you into an altered state or not, are you in resonance with that particular chant, all those factors now start coming into play.
Once Shiva awakens, he and his Shakti begin to dance together, and the dance ends with her merging into him again. When the projection of the Shakti occurs, Shiva sleeps because he has lost the part of him which was aware of himself, his true self. After Shakti wakes Shiva, she ceases to exist. It is only when your ego forgets all the eight nooses and the rest, which force it to self identify with the body, the physical I, and identify with Shmashan because your ego is simply your own personal Shakti, that the ego awakens the Shiva, capital I, and the dance begins.
So again, it's all a matter of awareness. The moment we start becoming aware, that is when the transition takes place. And here Shakti represents Maya also. Now, if Shiva awakes, then the Maya cannot remain because she merges into him. So, when we are going into wholeness, which is represented by Shiva over here, then naturally the Maya, the illusion, cannot remain anymore.
One final thing. Do you know why Shmashan Tara is always depicted in the Shmashan near a roaring funeral pyre? It is not your physical body she is burning on that pyre. It is your causal body. She cremates all the billions of karmas filled in the storehouse, which is your causal body, thereby freeing you from further obligation of being born in the world.
So, again, so this is now talking about all your vasanas. Okay. She helps you to get rid of all your vasanas, the prarabdha as well as the sanchit vasanas, and clears you so that you can again merge with the Godhead. So this is like tathastu. It is your blessing of the energy of the Ma to make you transcend.
See Ma, evaluate her from all her facets, find out about her yourself, and find out the way you can love her best. Most humans are such idiots that they are terrified of Ma because they are afraid to disengage themselves from their filth. You must see her in her playful form, her terrifying form, all her forms, and love her.
So you cannot love a part of a person. You have to love the whole person. So everyone has their own facets, right? So over here it clearly says that you need to experience her in all her states and also love her in all her states. That is when you will actually form a true bond with her.
The next chapter starts. You want to start that?
Yes, of course.
Chapter 3 Shiva. The world considers you inauspicious, O destroyer of lust, who plays in the smashan smeared with ash from funeral pyres, wearing a necklace of human skulls with goals for comrades. But for those who remember you with devotion, O bestower of boons, you are supremely auspicious. This is from the Shiv Mahimna Stotra 24.
So over here, people who do not see Shiva for what he really is are affected by that exterior, the facade. But when you really see the inner, that is when you will actually connect with him and understand who he is.
Mahakal. One day I said to Shmashan Tara, "You are my my mother. But who is my father? I know the mother always shows the child the face of its father. So won't you show me mine?" We have a saying in Hindi: only your conscience knows all your sins, and only a child's mother knows its true father. Without Smashan Tara, I could never have succeeded at the sadhana for her grand consort, Lord Shiva. Tantrics and Aghoris work this way. First, they achieve success at sadhana for Shakti and then use that Shakti to move on to the universal soul, Shiva.
So unless you can master Maya, you can have Maya under your control, or you develop a true relationship with Maya, you cannot transcend and become whole, which is represented by Shiva.
I spent 3 years at the Worli Smashan in Bombay performing rituals before my Tara would finally agree to show me the sadhana for Mahakal, the destroyer of the cosmos. That sadhana was impossible to perform in Bombay. First, I went to Neemtala Ghat in Calcutta, and then I spent 10 months on Manikarnika Ghat in Banaras. Manikarnika Ghat is called Mahasmashan, the greatest Smashan. Not even 1 second passes there in idleness. There is at least one body burning at all times around the clock. This has been going on for untold thousands of years. The fire which is used to ignite the pyres has been maintained continuously for centuries. It is never allowed to go out. People come for thousands of miles to Banaras just so that they can die there and be burned on Manikarnika Ghat. Every day, dozens of bodies arrive by train, the bodies of those who died outside Banaras but yearned to be cremated there. There are too many bodies for them to burn down all the way to ash. So, as soon as the skull pops open and most of the flesh is incinerated, the priests recite the appropriate verses and push the corpse into the Ganges river to make way for another one. As soon as the body hits the river, packs of dogs fight each other for remaining morsels, and then the turtles and fish devour whatever is left. If you were to stay there 10 months at a stretch like I did and still not realize that you are going to die, well, then there is no hope for you. You'll never realize it. You'll die in ignorance.
Okay, so again, around the clock, and there's a story that these turtles over there are there and they actually clear up the debris. I mean, the bodies which are going, they actually clear them up. Okay, so they also perform a very, very important task.
I used to sit there all day and all night. I would cook my rice in a fresh skull each day without even cleaning out the bits of brain. The smashan is the ideal place for the worship of Lord Shiva because death is the eternal reality and Lord Shiva is the destroyer, the very embodiment of death. You will always find him among the dead, amidst spirits, corpses, and the ashes of burnt bodies. Manikarnika Ghat is Shiva's favorite haunt.
So
While I
again,
was
okay, so now one thing I forgot to mention, when the head pops, right? Now you can leave your body from the there are how many? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. You can leave from 10 doors. They're called the 10 gateways. So you have the anus, you have the urinary tract, you have the mouth, you have two nostrils, you have two eyes, and you have two ears and the top. Depending on the way that your spiritual progress has been, you will exit from that gate. They're called the 10 gates through which you can emit. Now, when a body is being burnt in the ghat, in the Hindu religion at least, there is something called the Kapal Kriya, where they actually burst the head, symbolizing that the spirit went from the head, because this is the highest place where to exit from. If you see babies, They have a very soft spot over here. Later on, the bones in the skull, they grow and they merge and they block that space up. Okay. So this is what he's talking about, that popping of the skull.
While I was doing the sadhana of Mahakal, there eventually came a time when I began to hear someone laughing in my ear and telling me, "You fool, do you realize that you are doing? Sorry, you fool, do you realize what you are doing? If I come and stand in front of you, you will have to die. There is no escape. No one can see me and live because no one can see me except at the moment of death."
So again, this is relating to that expanded state of consciousness. To be able to actually see him, the state of consciousness that you need to be in, you cannot have that state of consciousness while being in the physical body.
I laughed and said, "I don't care. I have to die someday, so why not now? I am ready to die, but I want to see you."
So, what is this signifying over here? There is no fear of death. So, he has become fearless. To go into these altered states, fear has to be put into the dustbin or flushed down the toilet. When we are going into these expanded states, fear has no place in it. Why? Because we are going into thought responsive universes. Now, if you are thinking of something you fear, that is what is going to manifest in front of you. So, here again, whenever we are doing these kriyas, whenever we are performing any of these kind of processes, we need to do it with fearlessness. We cannot be fearful when we do these processes.
This went on for several days. Then the voice said, "Listen, I'm serious. If you keep this up, it will mean your end." Again, I explained, "I am ready to die. Life means nothing to me. I am waiting for you." Finally, Mahakal became pleased with my sadhana and told me, "I know you want me to come and stand before you, but you will not be able to endure seeing me and still continue to live. I will come and stand behind you, and I will always remain with you at your back." Since that day, I have never been afraid of death. How can I be with the destroyer himself to back me up? I now know what death is, and when it comes to me, I will embrace it because it is my own beloved deity, Mahakal.
So, making that connection with that higher state of consciousness and having it at your back, what does it mean? That you're totally protected, you're totally guided, you're connecting with guidance, you're connecting with with a higher state of consciousness.
I started out talking about Shiva and then began to call him Mahakal. Shiv and Mahakal are two aspects of the same being. Call him Atma, Purush, Universal Soul, Ultimate Reality, God, the Father, or what you will. Shiva is the one, the Absolute, the one without a second, the embodiment of pure consciousness. All duality exists in the manifested universe, and Shiva is beyond all that.
So, what he's saying is everything comes out of that oneness, which is represented by Shiva. So, if there is duality, then Shiva can't be there because Shiva is actually beyond duality.
Or rather, almost beyond all that. Shiva has a form, which means that his personality exists within nature, created from Adya. Lord Shiva is not absolutely absolute because, out of compassion, he has taken on an attribute or two to enable us to comprehend him. These attributes, though, do give him certain limitations, very subtle ones, of course. So subtle that from our point of view, they are no limitations at all, but they are sufficient to distinguish him from Mahakal.
So, if one is absolutely whole, then you cannot experience anything, and no one can experience you. Because of that, unless you are 100, not 100% pure, only then you can be experienced. So there's a distinction between Shivji and Mahakal over here, where Shivji has a certain amount of attributes removed so that we can actually connect with him in this case.
Mahakal has no limitation of any kind whatsoever, at least in the universe we know. He has no form at all, none. At least Shiva manifests a form we can concentrate on. Mahakal is utterly formless, which means he can assume all forms at will.
So if the person is whole, if the thing is whole, then totally formless. We cannot have a form. But since he is whole, he can appear as anything.
Mahakal is the god of time. He is Satyashri Akal, true auspicious, beyond time. He is time. How can he be subject to it? Since time exists only for mortals, Mahakal must be immortal, which makes him true because he is absolute, free of any taint of Maya. This makes him auspicious in the true sense of the word. Mahakal is the only being of all possible beings in the universe who never falls prey to Maya.
So Maya comes out of Mahakal. So how can Mahakal fall prey to Maya? And Maya is the one which creates time. So naturally, if Maya is coming out of Mahakal and she is the one who creates time, then how can Mahakal be subjected to time? So Mahakal is beyond all time.
Even Lord Shiva, the same essence as Mahakal, in a different manifestation with a different job to do, fell once or twice. But Mahakal never even looks at Maya. No one can persuade him to. When he comes for you, no matter how hard you beg for 5 minutes just to put your affairs in order, no is the only answer you will get. When even Lord Krishna himself could not induce death to wait for even a moment, how will you be able to do it? Why is this? Because Mahakal is the pivot on which the entire universe turns. On the one hand, there is the Sagun Brahman, the samsara, which is the infinity of forms, endless. On the other hand, the Nirgun Brahman, which is formless, infinity, absolutely no form, zero as far as form is concerned. Between these two, connecting them together is Mahakal. He is the fulcrum, the tangent between infinity and zero.
So beyond Mahakal also there is something. That is what this is saying. I think we can stop here. It's 3:14. Pretty interesting. Anyone has anything to say?